up, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Biz and Breakthrough. Super excited to have Karolina here with us today. I think it's phenomenal what she's doing on the earth. And I really appreciate that she has like really formed her own lane and she has her own unique way of showing up in the world and serving people. So I'm just really excited to talk to her, to dig a little bit deeper into the work that she does with the women that she coaches. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is and what led her to doing what she does today. Karolina, the mic is all yours.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie, so much. I am an alcohol-free empowerment coach, and what I do is I help very intuitive, often entrepreneurial women reevaluate the relationship that they have with alcohol so that they can really unleash their deepest potential and not be blocked by anything that might be holding them back in their way. And when we talk about alcohol in our society, it's often this really black and white conversation. It's either you have an addiction or not, or you need to go to AA or rehab or not. And I'm here to shake things up. I'm here to ask people, why can't we start reevaluating the role of alcohol plays in our lives, no matter what our relationship to it looks like? And that's kind of my backstory, is this is all based on my own transformation. I started drinking in college like most people do, and I had such a party identity back then. I just loved going out and drinking and stuff. And I will say that I probably drank the most back then. But as I got older, I got into more health and mindfulness. So I got into, healthy eating, doing yoga classes, and trying to get into personal development. And so drinking became this thing that I compartmentalized. Basically, Monday through Thursday, I lived a really healthy lifestyle. And then Friday through Sunday, I would drink every weekend. And it was your normal drinking. I'd go out with my friends or socialize or go to the barbecue or whatever it was. But every Monday morning, I couldn't shake this feeling. I woke up feeling horrible. I woke up feeling groggy. I woke up feeling ashamed. I woke up feeling like I took 2 steps forward in my healthy lifestyle during the week and then 5 steps backward over the weekend. And I knew something needed to change, but every time I thought about making a change, it just seemed too drastic. Like, what am I supposed to do? Just call myself an alcoholic now and go to AA now? I didn't really match up with those kind of stories whatsoever. And I didn't think I was really allowed to make any changes unless I was like in that category.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept drinking. I kept trying to make it work, trying to keep drink less and compartmentalize it even more in my life. But it just was this existential crisis I was having where my intuition was saying, enough of this.
Wow.
Finally, I heard of dry January. And that's when I had this light bulb moment of like, oh, I can just take a break from alcohol and I don't have to go around explaining it to people. And that was a real chance to get some time away from drinking. And I literally fell in love with the experience. I fell in love with how deep my sleep was. I fell in love with how peaceful and joyful I felt every morning. And I noticed my mood really elevating. I noticed myself feeling happier going hiking and having deeper belly laughs and cuddling with my dog. Just the little things brought me joy. And February comes around and I really want to keep going alcohol free. But there's this belief in my brain that's like, well, Karolina, if you want to be a normal adult, you have to drink. And so I drink a few times socially that February and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Even just 1 or 2 drinks completely ruins my sleep, makes me feel super fuzzy the next day. But even in the moment, I notice that it ruins my mood. It makes me feel frustrated and impatient, after the buzz wears off and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't fun like I thought it was. So I decided to take another break at that point, and I've basically been alcohol free ever since. And what's happened is over the last 5.5 years, I've grown so much. Not only has my physical health improved, my emotional health, my spiritual health, but really getting the confidence I needed to go after my biggest dreams. See, my life before was in a 9 to 5, and the weekend that I drank during, it was the weekend I couldn't wait for. It was TGIF every single week. How can we just get through this week so I could get to the weekend and unwind? And when I went alcohol free, I realized that I wasn't fulfilled in my career and that I needed to make that change. And the confidence I got from going alcohol free gave me the courage to not only launch my own business, leave my day job, write a book, which I'd always wanted to do, and make a difference in people's lives and make impact in people's lives as my full-time career. And I seriously haven't looked back since. And now what I do is help other ambitious entrepreneurial women reevaluate that relationship they have with alcohol, because even if it's quote unquote normal or not that bad, is it helping us achieve our bigger dreams? Is it helping us wake up and feel happy and aligned with the work we were meant to put on this planet to do? Or is it somehow some kind of a mindset or habit block? And I think that's a really valid question that anyone can ask, because we're essentially kind of I don't want to say brainwashed, but we're just like, we're group think into alcohol. It's just this thing,
Mhm.
like we all do it as a society. It's just what you do to socialize. And I think with some introspection, we can all kind of redefine what our relationship to alcohol looks like.
Yeah, I really love that. It reminds me a little bit, just about a little bit of my history of using certain things to really just cover up feelings, like, especially because I was always a shy girl, and going to the club in your 20s is the thing to do, right? And if you're not drinking, you look lame, and nobody wants to hang with you, and all of these things. But really, just jumping into using certain things to cover up the fact that I really did have like a self-esteem problem and a confidence problem, and I didn't know how to be myself within a group of people that maybe were drinking and were comfortable with that, but I didn't want to use that any longer to like cover up the fact that I had a lot of inner work to do. And I wanted to be comfortable with being in a crowd and being amongst people that I considered my friends, but not having to do what was considered normal if it was unhealthy for me. So I think it's really cool that you were able to be strong enough to just follow your own path and to go along your own journey and to say, you know what, I have to do this for me, despite of what anyone has to say about it. And I'm going to do really what's in my best interest. So I think that's so cool, especially that it puts you in a position to be able to now help other women through the same thing. I know in my community, in the African American community, it can be a little taboo. When a woman, I've seen it before, like when maybe they do a reel talking about how they're not drinking alcohol anymore, or they're, putting down the wine, and people are like, why? What are you, some type of addict? Like, what's wrong with you? But really, it may not even have to be that serious for someone to want to put aside something that may be unhealthy for them. And why does it have to be that serious? Why do I have to let it get to a point where now I'm passed out and can't function, or I do have to go to AA or something along those lines, or some rehabilitation center, when I can stop it before it even gets that far? So I think it's really cool that that wasn't a part of your story, and you recognize that these other sources that are supposed to help people in a situation are not necessarily right for me, and I have to create something for myself. And now you created something for other people. So I think that's so cool. I do want to talk a little bit about really the part of your journey, like, that really required you to have the strength to really step into what's next for you and really walking into this. Do you feel like it required a lot of faith, or do you feel like, it was tough and maybe you depended on some friends or something like that? But like, how did your spiritual life tie into you being strong enough to really just walk this journey despite what anyone had to say about it?
Yeah, such a good question. And I just applaud you as well, because I really do think that ditching alcohol or reevaluating it is such a personal growth journey. And just
Absolutely.
recognizing that, especially in our 20s, we use it because of self esteem, or, if we were the shy ones, me too, we might use it as
Mhm.
a way to become more confident or more gregarious or something like that. And it's like, that's never truly being built within us. We're always using this crutch to lean on to be able to tap into that side of us instead of actually developing it from within, which was a lesson I had to learn too. I will say that it's definitely been a spiritual journey, and that at first it was really this huge intuitive nudge, huge, right? Every
Mhm.
Monday morning, and my intuition was speaking loud and clear to me. And for years, I was ignoring her. For years, I was like, no, like I wanted to, but like every time I looked at my social calendar, I was like, well, I have this wedding on Saturday, and I have this happy
Mhm.
hour and this networking event. So like it's like society's voice was so much louder than my own voice for so long, until it
Mhm.
wasn't. Until I really needed to listen to that voice, because like it
Mhm.
was telling me also too that it wasn't that, like, in a traditional rock bottom story, that like, oh, you need to stop drinking or else, right? Some big bad
Right.
horrible thing is going to happen. It was
Mhm.
more like, you are meant for greatness. You are meant for so much more. You are meant to do so much more with your life than this like mediocre repetitive cycle. And that's what the voice was telling me. Like, you would be so much better. And so when I ditched alcohol, there was part of it that was this like leap of faith into that. And I have to say that I didn't come around it thinking it was going to like quit for good. I just thought of it as a break, which was a really good way to ease my ego and my,
Mhm.
subconscious mind into the experience, and just experience it like that, like an experiment, really, to where I get to try both things. But I think at the ultimately, like, I was getting these strong messages that like alcohol was a way of playing small. Like,
Mhm.
I started my entrepreneurial journey after I ditched alcohol, and that was really the call for me to like take my gifts and release it to the world and make money off of the things that I love and am passionate about. but I can't even imagine trying to do this work while drinking. Like even just having a few drinks with a friend and the next day having to go on a live or, like I would have just wanted to hide. Like I just didn't, maybe alcohol made me more gregarious when I was drinking, but the next day I was like, take me back to my little cave, to my comfort zone. Like I didn't want to be seen. And so for me, it was this bigger metaphor of like, am I going to play small in my life? Am I going to sit on the sidelines and watch other people play big? Or am I going to take center stage? Am I going to live into the purpose I was meant to live on this planet and truly go after my destiny and what I was here to do? And, there was a point in my journey where, like I said, it was always supposed to be a break. So I wasn't really like having to make that decision right away. But when I had this opportunity to drink again after the second time I took a break, I was actually in Japan. And I had planned this trip to Japan before. So I already actually had this drinking and food tour on the calendar, right? And I get to this tour, I'm feeling amazing. Like the sights of Japan are just awe-inspiring. So much wonder in my heart is being created. I wake up every day with gratitude. And this beer is placed before me, right, at the drinking tour. And I just think to myself, all of this confidence, all of this awe, all of this wonder, all of this like daily joy that I'm feeling, it's going to be wiped away like that the second I have this drink. And for what? A beer that I've had like literally thousands of times in my life. Been there, done that. Like I know what it tastes like. I know what it feels like. I know that whole little merry-go-round. But this other path that I've never experienced before, I have no idea where that goes. And there was this voice of faith that was telling me, Karolina, it's going to go far. Like your biggest dreams are going to happen because of that. And I can say wholeheartedly 5.5 years later, they have. I always used to be this type of person who dreamed of a freedom lifestyle, working for myself and making an impact. Now I'm a multiple six-figure entrepreneur who retired my husband. We travel the world. I have a best-selling book. I host retreats all over the world. I have incredible clients that I work with. And this was the pipe dream for me when I was sitting in my cubicle thinking that wine was the highlight of my week. It's just like, think bigger. There's so much more pleasure and joy and impact and purpose that we all are meant for than that little 20-minute buzz.
Yes, I think that's so cool. I think so many times people dismiss those little intuitive nudges or they're like, whatever, it's just my thought for the day. And they don't realize it's something so much deeper is pulling you in a certain direction, and it tells us in the word that like the Holy Spirit is the warning before the storm, basically. So it's crazy because we have no idea how even that glass of wine, it could have led you to something like a really dark place, or it could have simply just kept you off the path that you were meant to go and the beautiful life that you really have created for yourself. Just something that small, a little whisper was all you needed, and you trusted it and you followed it, and look where you are today. So I hope everyone that's listening realizes that it doesn't have to be an intuitive nudge. Like you say, you don't have to hit rock bottom, and it doesn't have to be this big wake up call that's like, oh my God, life is just going to be terrible if I don't get it together. It's like, no, I have a pretty decent life, but it can expand into something so much more for myself if I just trust this little whisper and have the faith to actually execute. And then when I am tested, like you were tested with the beer being placed in front of you, you decided to not do the thing. And that's where I feel like a lot of people drop the ball. Unfortunately, it's like, okay, I trusted it and now I'm doing it. But when it comes time for the test, I dropped the ball a little bit. So it's really about not only like trusting it, but having the faith, but cultivating the discipline and keeping your eyes really on the bigger picture like you did. You was like, no, I have all of this right here. Why would I go back to something? I already know what this is about. I don't need to go back there. I already know what that's going to lead me. I'm trying to hold on to hope for a better future and the things that I really want to build. So I just think that's phenomenal. I'm grateful that you really did get the discipline and be like, no, I'm going to stand strong and I'm going to trust myself and trust the direction that I really want to go. I do want to talk a little bit, because we talked a little bit already about intuition and things like that, and how getting rid of the alcohol and things like that really led you to finding your greater purpose. But I know for a lot of us, it can be a lot of challenges, especially when we're using it. Maybe we aren't at rock bottom, but we're using it just to feel better, just to get a break, just to wind down. Like, what are some common challenges or misconceptions that you see people have when it comes to really getting rid of alcohol?
For sure. Well, first of all, I think that we are groomed both with marketing and common experiences and just so many different conditionings around us to really believe that alcohol is meeting our needs and all these
Absolutely.
different needs that it's meeting. So obviously we have this conception in our society that it helps us relax. So it's meeting our need for decompression, for like all the things the responsibilities we carry on our plate every day, all the things we're doing, and then finally we get to come home and pour a glass and relax. And that's a really interesting one, because obviously that's a huge reason why most people drink, and a huge reason why my clients drink too. And when you look into the science of alcohol, there's nothing about it that actually relaxes the human body. In fact, because it's a depressant, because it slows down our central nervous system, which might be, perceived as relaxation, our body actually goes into hyperdrive. It has this counteractive process to fight off that depressant nature, and it releases a ton of stress hormones in the moment. So we actually release cortisol, adrenaline, and dynorphin in response to alcohol. Dynorphin is this neurotransmitter that is like the opposite of endorphins and actually makes you feel really low and sad, and has been found in very high levels of people who commit suicide. And so this is released every time we drink. It makes us feel anxious and low and sad afterwards. Sometimes we feel that just an hour after a drink. If you just have one drink, you'll notice a crash. And that's why most people want another drink, because it's like, let's get back up again. But if we keep drinking all night, for example, sometimes you'll feel in the morning. So if you've ever had that 3 or 4 a.m. wake up call, it's like literally your body's been just shot with adrenaline, or more anxiety the next day. And this effect actually lasts much longer than the actual ethanol in our body that can get detoxed within a day or two. These stress hormones can circulate in your body for weeks. So for me, when I was drinking every weekend, for example, the stress hormones never even got a chance to completely cycle out of my body before it was time to drink again. Like I basically lived in this apathetic low all the time. And then when I drank, I got this like fake shoot of dopamine, and then it crashed again. And so when I stopped drinking, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks, and it's super unique depending on everybody's like mental health and brain chemistry. But once those neurotransmitters rebalance, your mental state goes a lot higher. Alcohol also reduces our amount of dopamine in our brain. So it actually retracts the receptors that catch dopamine, because there's such a flood of dopamine. The brain knows it's fake, just like with heroin or with like cocaine. It will actually take away the receptors over time so that we're less sensitive to dopamine naturally. And it lowers our serotonin and our GABA. So our happiness neurotransmitters go down as drinkers, our stress hormones go up. And that's just what normal feels like. And I had no idea that that was all being messed up by alcohol. I thought that was just how I naturally felt. So by taking a break from alcohol, we're actually able to rebalance and see what our normal state feels like. And a lot of people experience a lot more joy. So that's a huge need, that relaxation. And obviously there's so many tools I teach in my book, or also my programs, on how to decompress in a much more holistic, natural way. And one of the easiest things I recommend people is like, there's actually nothing wrong with coming home after a long day and pouring a drink, right? It actually does signal to your brain, hey, it's time to relax. You don't have to answer emails anymore. Your day is done. But why does it have to have ethanol in it? Like the signal to the brain to relax will happen with any drink. Pour yourself a beautiful mocktail, or have like a tea or an alcohol-free beverage, like whatever it is, you're going to still get that same signal to relax. It's now decompression time, because your brain's already learned that this is the signal. Same thing with bonding, right? Or socializing. Like we can still use alcohol-free beverages or mocktails or sparkling waters, whatever, and still have something in our glass and have the same kind of bonding experience with other people that are drinking. It's just, who cares about what's actually in your glass? So that's one need. Another need that we use alcohol for is often for stimulation. So instead of like wanting to come down after a busy day, it's like we want some excitement. It's Friday. We want to go out. And this is often a signal that our brain and our soul isn't getting enough stimulation and enough challenge. And so for me, for example, when I took out drinking, I had to actually figure out what was fun for me. Like for Friday nights, ever since I was, in college, like it was drinking. And now I had to be like, no, Karolina, what is actually really fun for you? What do you enjoy? And I had to go on an exploratory kind of adventure to try all these different things. I remember going to paddleboard yoga. I went to writers' workshops. I went to Zumba classes. I went to the symphony, just to try new things, to see what actually brings me organic joy, not just some fireworks in my brain that like, the press of a button with a glass of wine does. Like what actually brings me joy. And through that, I found that I really have a passion for writing and for sharing this new message. And so I started my business and writing my book, which really gave me that stimulation that I needed. And I think that oftentimes that purpose you were asking about before When we look for alcohol to give us some joy or excitement or something just to do, it's actually a greater signal from our brain that we need to be tapping into our bigger purpose. We just haven't quite
Mm.
found what that is. Because once you get the high of truly living into your purpose and making that impact and sharing your gifts, whatever that looks like uniquely for you, that will never compare to that little buzz that you are getting from a drink, right?
Mm.
And then there's a third category of needs, and that's a lot of our social needs. We are still in so many ways biologically like hunters and gatherers who lived in tribes, right? Everybody drinks. That's like the group conformity. And when we do not drink, we therefore feel like the outcasts, and our brain almost gives us the same signal of like, you're going to be shunned, you're going to die, you're not going to survive. And so recognizing how alcohol plays into most social interactions is super key for people. If you're like me and Stephanie and you were shyer or more introverted, you might feel like alcohol helped you become more confident. And that's a really beautiful personal development journey to go on, to actually learn how to be confident in your own skin and not use alcohol for that. But if you also feel that you are just going to be the odd one out or people are going to ask you questions, it's also a courage experiment to learn how to stand firm in your own values and not be swayed by the people around you, and have courage and confidence to share what you're doing instead of hiding it away from people. And trust me, you're going to turn heads in a good way. Like, so many people will actually be inspired by you. There's this one statistic that shows that 52% of Americans actually wish that they drank less or not at all. So you're not the only one who feels like a little rough after drinking the day, like biologically, the human body doesn't feel good after alcohol. That's just how it is. And so most people recognize that and actually wish that they were drinking less or not at all. And when you go to a social occasion and you're the one who's not drinking and having a mocktail, you might actually inspire curiosity and inspiration for other people to be like, whoa, if she could do that, maybe I could too. Because I have to tell you, if I went to a party 7 years ago and I saw someone not drinking and having fun and dancing, I would have been like, wait a minute, you're allowed to do that? I really didn't think you were allowed. I didn't even have that kind of role modeling placed before me, like as an example. So there's just so many different beautiful ways. It's such a personal development journey of recognizing what needs we're using alcohol for, changing those limiting stories to not believe that alcohol is the fix for that, and then finding a new way to meet those needs. And I'm telling you, when you do it this way, it's not about deprivation. It's not about I can't drink. You just don't want to drink anymore. Alcohol becomes meaningless because it's not serving you at all.
Right. That's so good. I'm a little bit of a science nerd, so I like to hear how the body really works. And it's so interesting to hear that because it is so true about what it really does and how we feel after. And it's really crazy that it puts us into a space of eventually, like you said, with other drugs as well, heroin or cocaine, of not being able to even receive natural dopamine anymore. So, like, it's like, well, what do we do after that? Like, we're trying to give ourselves something, but tearing it away from ourselves at the exact same time. So I think that's so interesting how all of that really ties together, like sciencey, the science way, and how your body naturally works when you are drinking. But also, like you said, being the person that can stand strong in their own values and really being able to be a leader and just not a follower, and that people will gravitate towards that because there is someone that's waiting on permission. You can be the one to give them permission. So I think that's so cool. I know that you talked about your passion for helping people really discover happiness beyond alcohol, and especially knowing how the science really works, that we are, in a sense, taking ourselves away from being able to naturally receive happiness. Like, I know for me, when I started to cut certain things off, I never was like a person that was like, oh, I want to drink or I need to drink. It was like you said, the social thing and covering up and all of this other stuff. But I had dealt with other things that I really had to shut off and was like, listen, I have to be my best self. And in doing so and cutting it off, I realized for me that, like you said, I had to figure out what Stephanie loved. Like, who am I outside of these things? Who am I when I'm not like covering up all my feelings all the time and having to learn how to communicate with my partner and, have healthy friendships outside of, alcohol and all of these other things. It was like I really had to kind of rediscover myself. And in a sense, I realized I almost was numb. Like it really was hard for me to naturally just be like, oh, I'm so happy today. Like that wasn't a thing because I didn't know what it was for so many years. But stepping into my purpose, like I remember the first big event I did, it was called Brunch and Breakthroughs, and Biz and Breakthroughs, a podcast, right? My first event, when I left out of there, I was on such a natural high. You would have thought I took something. I was like buzzing and I was like bursting at the seams with so much excitement. I was just feeling, I was like, oh my God. I remember a friend of mine had went with me to volunteer to help like sign people in. I was telling her on the ride home, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did it. I'm so freaking excited. It was like, it went by so quick. I'm like, I feel like I could go back on stage. Like it was just so much wrapped around that emotion. That was dopamine. That was natural dopamine just from living in my purpose. Even now with the boutique, my husband teased me all the time, but I'm so satisfied with the littlest things like putting new pricing up and putting new inventory on the shelves. And I'm like, oh, it's so cute. I'm so excited about how this is coming out. Like living in your purpose will really do it for you. Spending time with God and sitting in meditation and praying and all of these things, I can feel really good. But imagine if I would have stuck with something that did not serve me and would have ruined it all. So, like, I know for us, we really had to go on this path of discovery. But in what ways do you really feel like people can start to discover that happiness beyond alcohol? What do you suggest to your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this story so much. Like I get goosebumps hearing your passion and your joy. And I think that's so interesting about that natural dopamine because compared to like serotonin or GABA, which make us also feel more peaceful and more calm, dopamine's also released when we do something challenging. So when we're
Mhm.
not getting outside of our comfort zone, when we're always just living the safe life and doing the same thing over and over again, we're not going to experience that dopamine, right? So your example of getting on that stage and doing something brave and doing something you've never done before and playing so much bigger in that moment than you had previously, like that is the natural equation for how to feel more dopamine. And it doesn't mean we have to do that every single day, but I mean, I think the whole purpose of life is to grow. And if we're always
Mhm.
staying stagnant and never pushing outside our comfort zone, we're not going to feel that growth. And so really when I work with clients in this area, it's really pushing the limits of who they, are. And I mean, at first it just starts as kind of a fun experiment. Like, well, what is fun for you? Let's just explore that. A lot of people get back into old hobbies or try new things, like things they always wanted to try, simple or funny things like tango classes or, doing clay pottery or photography
Mhm.
or something like that. But as it gets deeper and deeper with their intuition, I feel like every single one of us has a beautiful, unique gift to share with the world. And
Mhm.
we are meant to share it. And we are meant to be the person who has the exact mix of experiences, personality, spirituality, skills, passions. It's just so unique within each of us to be able to share that gift out into the world. And so
Mhm.
many of my clients find that and are authors themselves because they wrote their book instead of drinking, or they launched their business, or they launched their nonprofit, or something beautiful that the world needs. I think it's that quote that we hear saying, think not what the world needs, think of what makes you come alive, and that is going to serve the world. And I think if
Mhm.
each of us can kind of really hone in on like, I really do believe in this idea that we come here for a reason. We come here for a reason, and it's this big, beautiful reason. And because life is so long and repetitive, all of us fall into this slumber. We fall into this, kind of sleepwalking at the wheel. And that's
Mhm.
where I was drinking. Like I was working a ho hum job. Everything was just dandy, everything was fine. But
Mhm.
working in that cubicle and not living out my purpose and not ever writing my book, I have to say that I had wanted to be a writer since I was like 6 years old because I've always loved books. I loved reading from a young age. And when I was a child, I would write a lot. I would write poems and short stories and little plays. And it's so interesting. I go off to college and I start drinking, and my writing dries up completely. I
Mhm.
just cannot write anymore. And I never lose the goal or the hope of one day writing a book. So every New Year's, especially in my later 20s, I would make this New Year's resolution. This is the year I write a book. And every year I tell myself, okay, I'm going to write for 30 minutes every single week. It happened the first week of January and then never again. I literally
Mhm.
didn't have the discipline. It was so much easier to open a bottle of wine than write that next great American novel, right? And I also really didn't have the emotional intelligence. If I was just going to
Mhm.
numb my emotions and not really mine the deepest feelings of my soul, how could I possibly write about another human's experience? You know what I mean? Right? It takes a lot of
Mhm.
emotional intelligence and honesty with yourself to be able to do that. So I could never write, no matter how hard I tried. I had just the worst writer's block. When I ditched alcohol, around 2 months into my alcohol-free journey, I'm standing on a beach in Hawaii, and I literally get this like message from, the universe or God himself. You are meant to write a book called Euphoric and launch a business by the same name. I'd never used that word before. I'd never even heard of it really. And it was just like euphoric. And a week later, every single chapter I was meant to write comes to me in a download as well. And again, I think this story is so remarkable because this goes to over a decade of just complete writer's block. No creativity, no inspiration, no good ideas, no discipline. And then it just comes pouring out of me, like this creativity that just cannot be unstopped. And though it took a time for my book to come out because of, how long it takes to get a publisher and an agent and all this kind of stuff, I have to say that I actually wrote the first draft in a really short period of time, which again was just so unheard of. And so that's like an example of like how we have these internal gifts and how alcohol just might be blocking them. I think first it blocks the belief that it's even possible. Because if you let yourself down around drinking, if say you have any kind of rules around it, like, hey, I'm not going to drink tonight, or I'm only going to have one drink tonight, or, I'm only going to drink on this day of the week, it's inevitable that you're going to break one of those rules and you start to crumble your self-trust. You don't believe in your word anymore. So if you can't even believe in your word about this, what makes you think you could write a book? What makes you think you could launch a business? And I had subconsciously been telling myself these negative beliefs for years. It just eroded my self-esteem. And when I ditch alcohol, all of a sudden it's like 3 weeks without a drink. Oh my gosh, 50 days I've been alcohol free, 100 days. Who is this woman? She's like superwoman, right? It's like an instant upgrade in my identity of being able to do something that for so long was my Achilles heel. And that confidence started to spill out into so many other areas of my life. So I'm super proud to just today, one of my clients has written her second book. It's
Wow.
really just a year of being alcohol free. She's also become an alcohol free coach. I have so many just clients around the world who really like listen to that intuition with all that clarity and all that really definiteness of purpose of just knowing, yes, I am here for a reason. This all is happening for a reason. A lot of times we have to let go of something that's no longer serving us in order to step into our brilliance. And again, that's just why I'm so passionate about this message. It's not actually about alcohol at the end of the day.
Mhm.
That's just kind of the symbol. It's just like the symbol of like, how are we staying stuck in our comfort zone, repeating the same thing, not really going after the life we want? And you take this, and I've just watched it happen so many times that I now believe in miracles. You take this one element out of your life, and all of a sudden you flourish. You just thrive,
Mhm.
you step into your brilliance. So in my programs, there's a lot of different introspective questions I'll guide clients on to even tap into what their gifts are, what they really want to be doing. So there's so many that I don't want to abbreviate them too much and share them all here. But it's just such a beautiful journey of coming, like, really, like you mentioned, this is the real you. And whatever was there before is either a mask or a filter or that numbness or whatever it took that you needed to shed to really stand in your brilliance. And I love that story that you shared as well of that. And I just wonder, like, who is the real version of us without
Mhm.
crutch, without that filter, without that numbness? Like, who are we came here to this planet to be in our brilliance as a gift of God, to really shine and share with other people how to lift them up too. I think the world would be such a better place if we all got to that point. And obviously, it's
Mhm.
a huge journey. This isn't easy work either. It's very hard to
Yeah.
learn how to sit with your emotions and heal them instead of numb them, or to dig deeper questions about what you were meant to do, or to heal any limiting beliefs or limiting situations that are very real in your life that might be holding you back. It's very, very hard work. But it's like, are we going to get to the end of the life and regret that we didn't do it? Regret that we didn't try? That to me is the hardest regret I think I could ever sit with.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think it takes an incredible amount of courage to even take the first step in that direction and say, you know what, I'm tired and I don't want to do this any longer. And something is trying to push me to be better, and that you created something that supports people through that process. Because I think it would have still been challenging, but it would have been easier if I had a guide during that time or someone that has been through what I've been through. And it's not necessarily, like you said, at the point of rock bottom, but it's like where I was at that point. Like, listen, we know enough enough is enough. You're not at rock bottom. Don't allow yourself to get to rock bottom. Let's do something about it now. But had a system to guide me through, so I don't have to like do all this research and figure it out and, mess it all up and, fall back into old habits. It probably took me twice as long than it takes some of the people that you work with. So I just think that's super dope. I do know that you have a free guide that supports people in just getting started or something like that. Can you please tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So, for me, just figuring out what to do instead of drinking because it was such a like go-to for fun, for relaxation, for boredom, for all those things. So I have a really fun guide called 50 Things to Do Instead of Drinking that really helps you
Awesome.
not only tap into your creativity, but also decompress, right? So there's ideas
Mhm.
for like the work week, for things that are kind of more slower paced and really just decompressing and turning on your parasympathetic nervous system, which we basically ignore, I think, in our modern society.
Mhm.
And then also stimulating ideas for the weekend to really start digging into what's fun for you, what brings you organic joy, what is real pleasure, and can even lead you to your deeper purpose and to your deeper passions that you're meant to express in this lifetime. So, it's a really fun guide. You can just go to my website, euphoricaf.com, and it's at the very top so you can grab it for your listeners.
Yes, I love all of that. I'll definitely make sure I link it wherever you guys are hearing this, watching this. It will definitely be linked below. I just love how, really getting into alignment. Like you said, once you stop doing something, that was a part of your purpose to stop so you can step into your purpose, led you to forming everything you formed. You got the download, you got the messages. Now God is really like, okay, let's get this thing rolling. Let me give you everything you need. But I think a lot of times people won't even get to that point and they're wondering why they're so stressed and so stressful because you have to, like you said, remove this one thing and then things can really begin to flourish for you. So I hope, if nothing else, everyone that's listening or watching really just takes back, like if you've been getting that intuitive nudge that it's time for you to stop something, whether it's alcohol, whether it's another substance, whether it's bad eating, whether it's whatever toxic habit that you know is really just not serving you. Trust what your spirit is telling you. Trust the intuition that God has given you and make the decision today to say, you know what? I want something more for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and take the leap of faith and I'm going to cut the thing out and I'm going to get support. So if it is alcohol, Carolina is wonderful. Listen, I can't look, I can only take you but so far. I can't take you all the way. Y'all going to have to get some help from other people. She will be a wonderful, wonderful resource for you to be able to begin that journey of really living an alcohol free life. And it doesn't mean that you are at rock bottom, that you are not functioning, that you are passed out somewhere from drinking. It simply means that you know it's time to stop doing the thing in order for you to have a better life. And so I hope that you have gotten something from today. I know I learned a lot that just continues to anchor me into really living an alcohol free life. I don't drink anymore. I really don't drink. I had weight loss surgery a year ago. And so I can't drink. Otherwise, I'll be crazy. But even prior to that, I had really slowed down because drinking was just like not a thing for me anymore. So now I live an alcohol free life, which I am excited about. I feel great. I don't feel like I'm missing anything, but it took years of work to get to this point. So we can shorten that timeline for you. Grab the free guide. That way you can have some alternatives to begin that process and reach out to Carolina when you are ready to really take the lead into living an alcohol free life and go live your purpose, honey. So thank you so much, Carolina, for being with us today. We appreciate you for your time, for educating us on so much, for really just sharing your story and the things that you've been through. We are grateful that you definitely took that leap of faith, that you answered, that you said yes to creating and living in your purpose. It's going to definitely support so many people. You're doing amazing work. And we thank you so much for being our guest expert today on the Biz and Breakthroughs podcast. We hope to have you back again soon.